What if I told you your favorite game wasn't designed to make you happy, it was designed to control you? Games aren't just entertaining anymore, they're systems, meticulously built to exploit how your brain works, keep you hooked even if you don't want to play, and the scariest part is, it's working. Think about the last time you played a game. Did you log in because you wanted to, or because you felt like you had to? Maybe it was to collect your daily reward, or finish a battle pass, or even grind for a rare drop. Whatever the reason, it probably wasn't about fun. It was about obligation, and that's not an accident, it's a feature. Modern games use psychological tricks to manipulate players, turning them into long-term customers. And at the heart of it is dopamine. It's a chemical in your brain that makes you feel good. Games trigger dopamine through rewards, progress bars, and moments of triumph, keeping you coming back for more. But here's the catch. These systems aren't designed to make you happy. They're designed to keep you playing. So take loot boxes for example. They're not just about the rewards. They're about the progress, the anticipation, the flashy lights, and the sound effects. It all works together to give you a dopamine rush, even if the reward itself is garbage. And when you finally do get something rare, that hit is so powerful, it makes you forget about the 50 times you got nothing. It's not gameplay, it's gambling. But loot boxes are just the beginning, so let's talk about battle passes. They're marketed as a fairer alternative to loot boxes, giving you a clear path towards the rewards. But they're also designed to create FOMO, the fear of missing out. You paid for the pass, so now you feel obligated to grind for rewards before the season ends. It doesn't matter if you're having fun. What matters is that you don't stop playing. And then there's the endless grind. Whenever it's leveling up in Call of Duty, or unlocking skins in Fortnite, or farming resources in a gacha game, the grind is carefully calculated to keep you on a treadmill of effort and reward. Every time you think you're done, the game adds another layer, another level, another challenge, or another update. It's not about giving you more to do, it's about making sure you never feel finished. But the most insidious part? These systems don't just waste your time, they change the way you think about gaming. What used to be a source of joy and escape becomes a source of stress and obligation. And once you're hooked, it's hard to break free. It's not a coincidence that you can't stop playing. Games today are carefully designed to keep your brain engaged, and they use some of the most powerful tools psychology has to offer. To understand how, we need to look at how games manipulate one of the most basic functions of our brain: dopamine. Dopamine is often called the reward chemical, and for a good reason. It's released when you achieve something or experience pleasure. It's what makes you feel good when you eat your favorite meal, win a game, or even hear a song you love. But there's the thing, dopamine doesn't just reward success, it also drives anticipation. It's what makes you feel excited when you're about to open a loot box or complete a level, and modern games have figured out how to hijack this system. Let's start with variable rewards. This is a concept borrowed straight from casinos. In a slot machine, you pull a lever, and sometimes you win. But you never know when the win is coming. That unpredictability keeps you hooked. Games use the exact same principle. When you kill an enemy in an RPG, there's a chance they'll drop a rare item. When you open a loot box, you might get that legendary skin. The uncertainty creates excitement, and that excitement triggers dopamine. Now you might be thinking, but isn't that part of the fun? And you're not wrong. Unpredictability can make games exciting. But the problem is that these systems are often engineered to exploit your brain's reward pathways. They're not about making the game better, they're about keeping you engaged for longer. Think about progress systems. Most games have bars, meters, or ranks that show you how close you are to the next level, the next unlock, or the next reward. These systems are designed to tap into something called the Zeigarnik effect. This is a psychological phenomenon where people remember incomplete tasks more than completed ones. In other words, your brain hates leaving things unfinished. That's why you feel compelled to just finish this one last quest or get the next rank. It's not the game itself, it's your brain being tricked. And it doesn't stop there. Games also use time pressure to keep you playing. Think about daily rewards or limited time events. These mechanics create a sense of urgency, making you feel like you'll miss out if you don't log in right now. This is especially common in free-to-play games like Fortnite or Genshin Impact, where seasonal events and rotating shops push players to act quickly. It's FOMO, the fear of missing out, and it's incredibly effective. But perhaps the most controversial mechanic is monetization, especially in the form of microtransaction. On the surface, spending a few dollars to speed up your progress or unlock a cosmetic item might seem harmless, but when games tie their progression systems to real money, they create a dangerous feedback loop. You start to associate spending money with progress and success, which can quickly spiral out of control. So take gacha games for example. These games use a system where you pull for characters or items using in-game currency. The odds of getting something rare are often extremely low, but the system is designed to make you feel like you're almost there. Maybe you just need one more pull, or maybe you've already spent so much that you feel like you can't stop now. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. Your brain tells you, I've already invested so much, if I stop now, all of it will have been for nothing. So you keep going, even you know you shouldn't. But here's where it gets even darker. These systems are especially effective on younger players. Kids and teenagers are more susceptible to these psychological tricks because their brains are still developing. Dopamine hits are more powerful for them, and they have a harder time recognizing when they're being manipulated. That's why games like FIFA Ultimate Team and Roblox have been criticized for targeting younger audiences with loot boxes and other predatory mechanics. And it's not just about the money. These systems also impact the way we experience games. Instead of focusing on the joy of playing, we start focusing on the rewards. Instead of exploring a world for the sake of discovery, we grind for achievements or loot. The game stops being about fun and starts being about work. I remember a friend who got hooked on a popular gacha game. At first he was just logging in and claimed the free daily rewards. Then he started spending a few dollars here and there to get new characters. And before he knew it, he spent hundreds of dollars and he wasn't even enjoying the game anymore. He was just chasing that next dopamine hit and was trapped in a cycle of anticipation and disappointment. This isn't just anecdotal. Studies have shown that gaming addiction shares many similarities with other forms of addiction, like gambling or substance abuse. It activates the same reward center in the brain, creating a cycle of craving and reward that's hard to break. And just like any other addiction, it can have serious consequences, financially, emotionally, and socially. But here's the question, is it really the player's fault? After all, we're just engaging with the systems that developers put in the first place. And those systems are designed to be as engaging and as addictive as possible. Developers know what they are doing. They know how to use psychology to keep us playing, and they've gotten incredibly good at it. And this isn't just limited to free-to-play games. Even big-budget AAA titles have started adopting these tactics. Games like Call of Duty Warzone and Apex Legends use battle passes, daily challenges, and microtransactions to keep players engaged. It's not about making the game better, it's about maximizing engagement and, ultimately, revenue. So, what do? How do we take control back? The first step is understanding how these systems work. When you recognize the tricks being used, you can start to resist them. But that's easier said than done, because as we explore in the next section, breaking free from these systems isn't just about a matter of willpower, it's a matter of understanding how deeply they are embedded in modern gaming. What happens when gaming stops being about fun and starts being about obligation? When you're no longer playing to relax or escape, but because you feel like you have to. The truth is, the systems, designed to keep us hooked, don't just waste our time. They can have profound effects on our mental health, relationships, and even the way we think about gaming itself. Let's start with the most obvious consequence, time sink. Have you ever logged into a game planning to just spend like 30 minutes, only to look up and realize it's been 3 hours? That's not a lack of self-control, it's the game doing exactly what it was designed to do. Systems like daily rewards, limited time events, and endless grind mechanics are built to stretch your playtime as much as possible. And while it might feel satisfying in the moment, this kind of prolonged engagement often leaves you feeling drained and unfulfilled afterwards. And it doesn't just stop at your time. These systems can also have a significant impact on your mental health. Games that use predatory mechanics like loot boxes and battle passes create a cycle of anxiety and reward. You're constantly chasing the next goal, the next reward, and the next dopamine hit. But the thing about dopamine is that it's fleeting. The high you get from unlocking a rare item or completing a challenge doesn't last, and soon you're feeling empty, craving that next hit. Over time, this can lead to feeling of stress, burnout, and over time, even depression. But perhaps the most insidious effect of these systems is how they changed the way we view gaming itself. Instead of playing for fun, we start playing for rewards. Instead of enjoying the journey, we become obsessed with the destination. And once that happens, gaming stops being a source of joy and starts feeling like a real second job. I remember talking to a friend who was deep into World of Warcraft. He wasn't just playing to enjoy the world or the story, he was grinding for gear, chasing raid rewards, and trying to stay ahead of the curve. When I asked him if he was having fun, he hesitated. Sometimes, he said, but most of the time it just feels like work. That's the reality for many players. Games that were once an escape become a source of stress. And it's not just individuals who get affected. These systems can also strain relationships. Think about how many arguments have started because one person spent too much time gaming instead of being present with their partner, family, or friends. These aren't just personal failings, they are the result of games that are designed to be all-consuming. One of the most extreme examples of this is gacha games. These games are often built around characters that players grow emotionally attached to. It's not just about collecting rare items, it's about collecting characters you feel a connection to. This emotional attachment can make it incredibly difficult to step away, even when the game becomes frustrating or expensive. I've seen players spend hundreds, even thousands of dollars chasing a character, not because they need it for gameplay, but because they feel emotionally invested. And let's talk about money. Microtransactions and loot boxes aren't just about spending a few dollars here and there, they can quickly spiral out of control. One study found out that a significant portion of revenue in free-to-play games comes from a small percentage of players who spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. These so-called whales, as the industry calls them, are often people who are vulnerable to addictive behaviors. And while most players don't fall into this category, the existence of these systems makes it clear where the industry's priorities are. But it's not just about financial cost. These systems also change the way we interact with games. In the past, gaming was about creativity, exploration, and challenge. Today, it's often about grinding, collecting, and completing. The shift in focus can make games feel hollow and repetitive. Instead of creating your own story, you're following a script written by the developers, designed to keep you engaged for as long as possible. Take FIFA Ultimate Team, for example. On the surface, it's about building your dream team and competing against other players. But in reality, it's a system designed to push players toward loot boxes and microtransactions. Oh, you want a better team? You should spend hours grinding. Or you could just spend some money and skip the effort. The result is a game that feels less like a competition and more like a marketplace. And it's not just board games, even single-player games are starting to adopt these mechanics. Games like Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Shadow of War have been criticized, including microtransactions in a genre that traditionally had no need for them. These systems blur the line between gameplay and monetizations, making it harder to enjoy a game without feeling pressured to spend. But the impact of these systems goes beyond gaming. They reflect a broader cultural shift towards gamification, the use of game-like systems in non-gaming contexts. From fitness apps that reward you for completing workouts to workplace productivity tools that use points and badges, the principles of gaming are being applied to more and more aspects of our lives. And while gamification can be a powerful motivator, it also raises important questions about autonomy and control. Are we really making choices, or are we just responding to systems that have been designed to influence us? So where does this leave us? Are we doomed to a future where every game, app, and tool is designed to manipulate our behavior? Not necessarily. As players, we have more power than we realize. By understanding how these systems work, we can start to resist them. We can choose to play games that respect our time and money, and we can push back against practices that exploit players. But it's not just up to us. Developers and publishers also have a responsibility to create games that prioritize fun over profit. Some studios have even already taken steps in this direction, creating games that focus on creativity, exploration, and challenge without resorting to predatory tactics. But for every game like Breath of the Wild, there are dozens of games that prioritize engagement metrics over player experience. But like I said, not all games are designed to keep you hooked at all costs. While the gaming industry is dominated by systems that exploit our time, money, and attention, there's a growing counter-movement. Games and developers that value creativity, exploration, and genuine fun over profit-driven manipulation. So let's again start with the standout example, Breath of the Wild. This game isn't just critically acclaimed for its design. It's a masterclass in how to respect the player's time and intelligence. There are no daily rewards, no battle passes, no loot boxes. Instead, the game gives you an open world filled with possibilities, where your only limits are your curiosity and creativity. If you see a mountain, you can climb, but if you find an enemy camp, you can approach it however you want, stealth combat, or even find a creative solution like setting the grass on fire and using the updraft to glide in. This kind of freedom isn't just refreshing, sadly, it's rare. In an industry obsessed with engagement metrics, a game like Breath of the Wild feels like a breath of fresh air. It doesn't demand your attention, it invites it. And that's what makes it so powerful. Another great example is Hades by Supergiant Games. On the surface, it's a roguelike, a genre often associated with grind and repetition, but Hades flips the script. Instead of punishing players for failure, it rewards them with story progression, character interaction, and new gameplay option. Every run feels meaningful whether you succeed or not. And perhaps most importantly, it's a game that respects your time. There are no systems designed to make you log in or spend money to progress. It's a complete experience crafted with care. But these examples are the exception, not the rule. For every Breath of the Wild or Hades, there are dozens of games that prioritize profit over player experience. So, what's driving this counter movement? Why are some developers choosing to go against the grain? Part of it comes down to trust. Players are becoming increasingly aware of predatory practices in the industry, and they're starting to push back. The backlash against games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 and Diablo Immortal showed that players won't tolerate systems that feel exploitative. And while these games still made money, the damage to their reputations and the reputations of their developers was significant. This shift in player expectations has led to the rise of what some call the indie renaissance. Independent developers, free from pressures of big developers, are creating games that focus on innovation and creativity rather than engagement metrics. Games like Celeste, Hollow Knight and Stardew Valley prove that you don't need loot boxes or battle passes to create a successful game. These titles offer deep, rewarding experiences that players can enjoy on their own terms. But it's not just about indie games. Even some AAA developers are starting to change their approach. Take Elden Ring for example. This game became a massive success without relying on predatory monetization. Its focus on challenging gameplay, intricate world building and player freedom made it a hit with both critics and players, and its success sends a powerful message to the industry. You don't need to exploit players to make money, you just need to make a good game. So what can we do to support this counter movement? As players, we have more power than we realize. By choosing to support games that prioritize creativity and fairness, we can send a clear message to developers and publishers. Every time you buy a game like Hades or Celeste, you're voting with your wallet. You're showing the industry that there's a market for honest, player-focused games. But it's not just about what we buy, it's also about what we demand. If players continue to push back against predatory systems, developers will have no choice but to adapt. We've already seen this happen with loot boxes. After the backlash against Star Wars Battlefront 2, many games started moving away from traditional loot boxes in favor of more transparent systems. It's not a perfect solution, but it shows that change is possible. At the same time, we need to recognize that the problem isn't just with developers, it's with the systems they operate in. The gaming industry is driven by profit, and as long as predatory systems are the most profitable option, they'll continue to exist. That's why regulation is an important part of the solution. Countries like Belgium and the Netherlands have already taken steps to regulate loot boxes, treating them as a form of gambling. And while this approach has its critics, it's a sign that governments are starting to take the issue seriously. Of course, regulation alone won't solve the problem. Change needs to come from within the industry itself. Developers and publishers need to ask themselves, what kind of games do we want to create? What kind of legacy do we want to leave behind? Because at the end of the day, the games we make and the systems we design reflect our values. And that brings us to the core question: what kind of players do we want to be? Do we want to be passive consumers, chasing dopamine hits and games designed to exploit us? Or do we want to take back control, supporting games that respect our time, money, and intelligence? The choice is ours. The future of gaming isn't set in stone. It's a battleground where the interests of players, developers, and publishers collide. And while the trends we've discussed, loot boxes, battle passes, and addictive mechanics, might feel overwhelming, they're not unchangeable. The direction gaming takes from here depends on the choices we make as a community and as an industry. Let's start with the players. As consumers, we hold immense power, even if it doesn't feel like that way. The games we buy, the developers we support, and the conversations we have all shape the industry. When players push back against predatory practices, developers take notice. We saw this with Star Wars Battlefront 2, where player outrage forced EA to overhaul its loot box system. And more recently, games like Diablo Immortal faced massive backlash for their aggressive monetization. These examples prove that our choices matter, but there's a flip side to this. For every player who protests against predatory practices, there's another who supports them, whether intentionally or not. Microtransactions, loot boxes, and gacha mechanics are incredibly profitable, and as long as they remain lucrative, publishers will continue to use them. The challenge for players is finding a balance between enjoying the games we love and holding the industry accountable. This brings us to the developers. While publishers often bear the brunt of criticism for exploitive systems, it's the developers who have to implement them. And for many developers, this creates a moral dilemma. How do you balance creative freedom with the demands of profitability? How to create a game that respects players while still generating revenue? Some developers have found ways to strike this balance. Games like Hades and Celeste prove that you can create financially successful games without resorting to predatory tactics. But for larger studios, the stakes are higher. AAA games cost millions of dollars to produce, and publishers are often unwilling to take risks. That's why we see so many games relying on familiar formulas and proven monetization strategies. So, what's the solution? Part of it lies in innovation. As technology advances, developers have more tools than ever to create unique, engaging experiences. Games like No Man's Sky, Elden Ring, and Breath of the Wild have pushed the boundaries of what's possible in gaming, proving that players are hungry for fresh ideas. But innovation doesn't just mean create bigger worlds or better graphics. It means rethinking the systems that underpin gaming as a whole. Take the concept of player agency. In a world where so many games are designed to guide players through predefined paths, there's a growing demand for games that give players more control. We've seen this with the rise of sandbox games like Minecraft and Valheim, where players create their own stories rather than following a script. These games offer a glimpse of what the future could look like, an industry where games prioritize creativity and exploration over monetization. But innovation alone isn't enough. The industry also needs to address its relationship with addiction and mental health. As we've discussed, many games are designed to exploit psychological vulnerabilities, keeping players hooked through systems that mimic gambling. While these systems might be profitable in the short term, they come at a significant cost to players, to developers, and to the industry's reputation. Fortunately, there are signs of progress. Some studios have started incorporating mental health considerations into their designs, creating games that promote well-being rather than addiction. For example, Celeste tackles themes of anxiety and self-doubt through its narrative, offering players a meaningful and cathartic experience. And games like Animal Crossing focus on relaxation and connection, providing a counterbalance to the high-stakes, high-pressure systems found in many modern games. But the responsibility doesn't just lie with the developers. Publishers and platforms also have a role to play. Companies like Steam or Epic Games and Microsoft have the power to set industry standards, whether it's by promoting transparency in monetization or supporting games that prioritize player well-being. And as governments around the world begin to regulate loot boxes and other predatory systems, publishers will need to adapt, or risk losing their markets altogether. So, what does this mean for the future of gaming? On one hand, the trend we've discussed, addictive mechanics, monetization and exploitation, are deeply entrenched. But on the other hand, there's a growing awareness of these issues and a growing demand for change. Players are speaking out, developers are pushing back, and the industry is starting to listen. But here's the thing, the future of gaming just doesn't depend on the industry, it depends on us. It depends on the game we choose to support, the conversations we choose to have, and the standards we choose to set. As players, we have the power to shape the industry, not just through our wallets, but through our voices as well. So where do we go from here? Do we continue down the path of endless monetization and addictive mechanics? Or do we demand something better? Games that respect our time, our money, and our intelligence. The choice is ours. And if we make the right one, the future of gaming could be brighter than ever. Thanks for watching.